This is Power 98.7. And now you're listening to Power Talk with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, 9 a.m. to midday, taking your calls on 0861 987 000.
Welcome back, Bantwana Benkosi. This is Power Talk indeed. On this segment, we are going to look at the Conclave. The Conclave is what is basically taking place at the Catholic Church's headquarters in Rome, where the new Pope is being elected. I'm joined by Cardinal Wilfrid Napier and Fr Thabiso Ledwaba of the Cathedral of the Sacred Heart in Pretoria. Welcome both, and thanks very much for creating time.
Good morning to you, Doctor. It's very nice to be talking to you here. As I look down over the Vatican City, St. Peter's is just below where I'm staying at the Franciscan Generalate on Via Aurelia in Rome.
Yes.
Nice to be with you.
Was it a disruption of your time? I suppose we're just a few hours apart.
No, we're exactly the same time. We're on the same time.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Thanks very much
Italy's on
indeed.
summertime. They are summertime, so they're exactly the same as us. Otherwise, they're 1 hour behind us.
Thanks very much. And Fr Thabiso Ledwaba, welcome indeed as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ndlozi.
Thank you.
Hello, Fr Ledwaba.
Father Ledwaba, you can respond. The Cardinal is greeting.
Good morning, Your Eminence. Good morning, Your Eminence.
Good morning to you.
It must be feeling so good to be in Rome at this time of the year. The winter is almost over. Summer is sinking in slowly.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, let's start just for the basic introduction in the interest of all of us who are not Catholics and the rest of the listeners. Maybe I could start with you, Father Ledwaba, just to paint the magnanimity of the current standing of the Catholic Church here in South Africa as well as in the continent, population-wise, and that in relation to the rest of the Catholics across the world.
Can you bring your question again, sir?
Father Ledwaba, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I'm saying that just for the benefit of all of us, the base of the Catholic Church in South Africa, as well as in the continent, vis-a-vis the numbers of the global followership of the whole world of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, the Catholic Church in Africa and vis-a-vis South Africa and the whole world. Generally, on the African continent, the Catholic Church is growing at a very amazing rate. Various parts of the world, especially where the missionary work of the Catholic Church was successful from the beginning. I'm talking about countries like Nigeria, I'm talking about Ghana, I'm talking about the Congo, maybe down south, we are talking about the Tanzania and Malawi. But here in South Africa, I must still admit that the numbers, the Catholic population, is not that huge, but we can notice quite a sizable growth. In fact, we just celebrated about 200 years of Catholicism in South Africa, but because of South Africa was initially colonized, the colonial masters were mainly the Dutch and the English, and therefore there was a general suppression of the Catholic Church. The famous Romse Gevaar actually made sure that Catholicism does not flourish as it should. So, but I think at the moment the Catholic Church is taking shape, where we have got the only challenge that we have is the vocations to the priesthood and religious life in the Catholic Church, and should that be attended to, I think the Catholic Church has an enormous future in this country.
When you say, just a quick explanation of that difficulty, why was it that because the Dutch and the British were the main colonizers, why were they opposed or hostile to the Catholic faith or to Catholic Church?
Perhaps, Doctor, this is where I should come in, because as a bishop, I'm more familiar with those actual obstacles. One of the main obstacles, of course, was that there were religious wars going on in Europe, and Catholics and the Protestants in particular. And both the Dutch and the British were very much against the Catholics because of the political situation more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so when it came to setting up Catholic institutions like schools and hospitals, clinics, and so on, many of which were done by the Catholic Church in those early years. I'm thinking of Natal, for instance, where St. Augustine's was set up by the Augustinian sisters. A similar hospital was set up in Pietermaritzburg, St. Augustine's in Durban, similar one in Pietermaritzburg, another one of similar kind in Escort, and in Ladysmith. So there were those, wherever there was a need, the Catholic Church was there trying to reach out and do that. But they were doing it against extreme odds very often. But I think the main problem nowadays is that we have to look at ourselves and to the extent that how are we differing from what is happening in other parts of Africa as far as evangelization is concerned. In many countries that Father Ledwaba has mentioned, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, and so on, the church is thriving and moving forward. We've got to ask ourselves why. And I think we've got to look at, have we settled down and looked at ourselves as we are now the African church and we can just do things as we like without that missionary push that these other countries still have.
But Bishop, over 3 million Catholics in South Africa, that's hardly a small population. The estimation I've seen is about 3.8 million.
Yeah. But
that's huge, isn't it?
It is big, but when you're scattered all over the place in small numbers, your impact is not quite as effective, I would say.
I see. And coming down then, I mean, before we go to the conclave itself, just the legacy of Pope Francis. You participated, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, in the conclave that elected him. But how would you paint that legacy for us? What did he represent, and what were his sort of major contributions in taking the Catholic Church forward evangelically, but also just general reforms?
I'm in a very good position to answer that question.
Yes.
I was, as you said, part of the conclave that elected him, but I also became quite an intensive part of the projects that he tackled after his election. For instance, he was, during the pre-election period, there's a lot of talk about whoever the Pope is, he's going to have to focus on renewing the church, getting our structures going again, getting us believing and more firmly committed in what we are doing. And so a number of practical measures were suggested. One of them being, the Pope can't reform the Catholic Church by himself. Therefore, he should surround himself with a hand-picked group of cardinals who would be his inner council. They came to be known as the Council of Nine. And then out of that came a number of reform efforts in different directions. I was intimately involved in the one which was entrusted with the task of the economic renewal and bringing all the financial situations of the Vatican into the area of the best practices in the world of today. And so I worked very closely with him. Pope Francis was a frequent visitor to our meetings and often intervened and said, we need to do this or need to do that. And so for 7 years, I was on a regular basis over here in Rome and saw how this new renewal of the financial management of the church was being pulled up. But there were similar things happening on the other side. The synod was busy making a renewal in the area of family life, marriage and family life, the area of youth, and the most recent one then, the organization of the church at its different levels, synodality. All the bishops, priests, religious, lay people in belonging to a particular area, working together to do the renewal of the church. So that's where I think Pope Francis, the main issues that he has tackled, and where he's left us with a work in progress, and we've got to take it up and move forward.
The big controversy around the Catholic Church with regards to the abuse of young boys, what would you say his score was in relation to that, which has also sort of tainted the image of the church for a while now?
Yeah, well, since the scandal broke in the 1990s, each of the popes, that's from Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict, and Pope Francis, each of them took this question extremely seriously. And instead of leaving the matters in the hands of local bishops, the local bishop, or even the local bishops' conference, those matters were brought to a higher level so that they would be treated more professionally. And I would say all three of those popes have done as much, if not more, than any human being could possibly have been asked to do. That area has been a very sore one, and it's, I think, one of the elements that's missing when one discusses this is that what the priests were doing was what was happening in society. I'm not making it an excuse, but I'm just simply saying our society laxity in the area of sexual morality has had its impact on the church as well. And that's what I think we've got to work at, and that's why Pope Francis, in his renewal of the Catholic Church, or the renewal of the church and of society, focused on marriage and the family. We've got to have good marriages. We've got to have well-prepared couples getting married so that they can have good families. And from that base of good marriage, good family life, we can then start impacting our parishes, and through our parishes, we impact society as well. But as far as the abuse thing is concerned, from a legal, procedural point of view,
yes,
the Catholic Church has probably got the best systems in place, but systems are systems. And they have to be put into operation with understanding, and I think with a great deal of commitment.
Are you able, and I know this must be putting you in the corner, under Pope Francis in particular, how many of the priests who had been found guilty and excommunicated and completely, removed, as it were, because of sexual exploitation of young boys? Are you able to maybe give us those numbers?
No, I am not in a position to give those numbers at all, and I doubt if there's any one person can give them, because they were dealt with, even though they were centralized at the Vatican, each country's bishops' conference or each diocese would have handled its own cases through that office.
I see. And Father Ledwaba, I mean, in South Africa, the standing of the public reputation of the Catholic Church, how would you measure it under Pope Francis and his legacy in general?
Yeah, I think the standing of the Catholic Church is, I think it is in a quite a good position at the moment. Well, we had hoped that he would visit South Africa before he could leave this world. But
that was going to be my follow-up question.
Yeah, but at least he was able to canonize one of our not canonize, sorry, but beatify, approve the beatification of one of our Catholics who was martyred, or rather martyred in Venda.
Yes.
In Venda, and his name is Benedict Daswa. So we are trying to understand as a Catholic Church in South Africa, what does that mean? And how can we make the best of such a powerful witness in our faith, who witnessed to the faith in that in that great manner. You know, in other countries, just to canonize one saint or beatify one saint, it really turns the faith around in that part of the world. And I think we here in South Africa, we have not fully made the best of that affirmation. So Pope Francis, in a sense, I think this is one of the legacies of his papacy, that he was able to recognize one of our own. And we are hoping that probably there are even few others that might succeed. And eventually we want to see how that will impact on the quality of the faith in this part of the world.
I see. If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We are speaking about Pope Francis and the ongoing conclave and the standing of the Catholic Church here in the continent and in the world. My other question, and before I sort of go to the conclave itself, was Pope Francis' work at an international scale confronting political leaders and political regimes. It seems to me this is one of the important things he's sort of well known for. And Cardinal Wilfrid Napier, what would you say in relation to that?
I think this is one of the areas that has stood out most clearly of Pope Francis as a person, as a church leader, and as the Pope. He was committed 100% to people who were on the margins, the poor, those who had no one to talk up for them, and he showed us in so many different ways. Among those ways would be on Holy Thursday, we have a ritual that we perform imitating Jesus, who washed the feet of his disciples during the Last Supper. Pope Francis took this and went to a prison here in Rome in order to wash the feet of the prisoners, the ones who had been cut off from society. And among those prisoners, he washed the feet of a couple of women and a couple of Muslims. So here he was just showing that his outreach and the outreach of the church is to everyone who is in a difficult situation. I'll take another example. Africa has been known for wars that continue and never seem to end. Well, when the war broke out in South Sudan after its independence, the civil war broke out there, he invited, through Sant'Egidio community here in Rome, the leaders of both those parties, the South Sudan. And the first thing he did when he went into the room to ask them to negotiate towards peace, he went down on his knees and kissed their feet as a gesture of saying, this is where your people are. You're walking on them. Therefore, I'm kissing your feet to remind you that this is a serious thing that you've got to do. You've got to make peace. I think that's one of the features that has come out so often in people's tributes to Pope Francis. His care for those who have no one else to care for them.
And I mean, the big one for me, and I would want to let you pass on that one, is the question of Palestine, and where there's a lot of conservative Zionist Christianity around. And he never minced his word about condemning the Israeli assault, specifically most recent times in Gaza.
Yeah, I think Pope Francis always doesn't attack people. He attacks their actions and the reasons why they're taking those actions. But he's never been anti-Israeli, but he has certainly said, your actions are not, they're against human beings, and I have to speak out on behalf of human beings. Every afternoon, until he got sick, every afternoon, Pope Francis would phone the parish priest of the people in Gaza to give them a support of solidarity, but also to find out from them what was happening and what was needed. Even as recently as a week before he died, arrangements were being made for one of his Pope mobiles to be converted into an ambulance, and it was sent over to Gaza. I think these are the gestures that show a man who had a very, very big heart and very close to the people, especially the people on the ground.
Cardinal Wilfrid Napier and Fr Thabiso Ledwaba joining us here on Power Talk Bantwana Benkosi to speak about the Catholic Church and the transition to a new leadership. We're going to take the headlines and continue with the conversation on the other side. We'll zoom in now to what is happening in Rome as we speak. Stay tuned. We're taking the headlines with Nyakalo Tefu. We are talking about the Conclave, which is the seating Bantwana Benkosi to choose the next Pope, the next leadership of the Catholic Church. I'm joined by Cardinal Wilfrid Napier and Fr Thabiso Ledwaba. And we're going to tease out now the prospects. Firstly, Cardinal, I think, what is the Conclave? If you were to introduce it for us, 101. Who does it constitute? And over the years, how has it worked? And how will this one? Who constitutes the one sitting now? And the prospects, well, not the prospects, but who are the people there at the moment constituting it? How many are there and all of that? Just detail.
Yeah. In a very brief way, the conclave is a gathering of cardinals who qualify because they're under 80 years of age. They qualify to meet and to choose the next Bishop of Rome. And he can be anybody, either one of them themselves or a bishop outside of the conclave, not a cardinal, or indeed anybody who is seen to be suitable for the position. What happens when the Pope dies or the Pope resigns? Within a very short, limited period, within 3 days, the College of Cardinals, the ones who are resident in Rome, working in the different departments, would call together a council in order to start to regulate the running of the Vatican in the absence of the Pope. Then they would notify all the cardinals that they are needed to come to Rome in order to sit down together and to govern the church and to prepare for the replacement of the Pope that has either died or has resigned. So at the moment, we've just completed on Wednesday, we completed the meetings in preparation for the conclave. And then from yesterday morning, those who are going into the conclave were separated apart. They're the ones who are under 80, they're the electors, and they've been in the conclave since yesterday. They had their first sitting to vote yesterday afternoon, and the successful candidate has to garner two-thirds majority of the votes. So there wasn't a two-thirds majority, and the indication to the outside world that the cardinals haven't come to a conclusion is that the ballot papers and everything else that was used during that voting period, these are burnt, put in a little stove at the end of the Sistine Chapel, and some chemicals are put in there so that black smoke comes out. They are now in session again this morning since 9 o'clock. They usually start off with a prayer, sometimes a reflection, and then they get on to the business of the voting, being reminded all the time what is permitted and what's not permitted. And then the votes are counted very systematically and very, very patently so that nobody can ever accuse the process of being mishandled in any way. And first ballot comes in the morning. If that isn't successful, a second ballot will be held this morning. Then there's a break for lunch. Before lunch, the second ballot will be taken. If that's inconclusive, then the same process as happened last night will take place again. The chemical will be put into the burning papers, and then the smoke will come out black. Then this afternoon, they go back into session again. So it goes on for 7 rounds, 7 voting rounds. If there's no conclusion at them, then they have to take a break of time to reflect, to pray, and then the process starts off again. So it's very, 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 very well controlled, and everyone, I think, knows exactly what is expected of them.
What is a cardinal, and how many are they?
A cardinal.
Yes, what
The
is
cardinals,
that's
there
the
are
thing,
about
you use
220.
terminology like a bishop,
Yeah,
a cardinal.
yeah.
What is a cardinal and how many are they at the moment? And if you could also give a sort of racial and global geographic breakdown.
Okay. A cardinal is really a bishop or a clergyman, priest. Sometimes they're priests who have been have distinguished themselves in professorial work or in other work in the intellectual field, who are chosen by the Pope to become his inner council, so a council, you could say. And so there would be about 250 cardinals, I think, at the moment, 250, 56 or thereabouts. But of those there, only those who are under 80 years of age are eligible to go into the
Why?
conclave and vote. Because, I suppose, physical health, mental health, and all those issues are taken into consideration. And it would be regarded as your best chance of getting a good result and getting it quickly would be to have people who are still very much in contact with their body and with the contact with the world outside. Not to say that the old ones are not. The man who's actually the dean of the cardinals at the moment is fantastic. He's 91 years of age and he's got the energy of a 74-year-old. So people differ. But that's just, that was the rules. That's the constitution.
Yeah. And in the history of the Catholic Church, you mentioned earlier that they could elect somebody from outside of themselves. Has that actually ever occurred?
Yeah. I think it would have happened very early days when there were not as many bishops and there were not many as many rules and things, and other factors might have been in place at that time.
Are they allowed to elect somebody above 8 years?
Oh yes, that could be done. That could be done. Yes. It's only that those who are not to be eligible to be in the Cardinal Electors College, you would need to be under 80 years of age. That's a regulation that was introduced by one of the recent popes.
Okay, Father Ledwaba.
The main thing I think here is got this group of men that are going in there. They've got the full support of the church in terms of prayer and psychological and whatever other support that they need. And their objective is we need to find out which one God wants to lead the church. That's the main thing. It's not about who's going to pull the politics this way or that way. It's about who does God need to run his church at this moment.
Okay. I wanted to bring in Father Ledwaba, which it's a question I will escalate to the Cardinal as well. But many people, particularly from this continent, wonder the prospects of the Catholic Church electing somebody that is of color, in specific terms, an African Pope. What is your assessment of that, Father Ledwaba? The prospects of it?
Yeah, I've been following a number of interviews taking place on international space, and I think there is a strong belief that Africa can actually provide a pope, especially those who are still looking for those basic traditional values. Values of family, for instance, values. That in fact, the value of tradition itself, the sense of tradition, is still very much strong in Africa. And so when Europe looks at itself and it realizes that it has become too modern, that it has lost foundations, and Africa therefore becomes an ideal place to bring back the sense of tradition, to bring back the basic values of strong belief, even in God, because Europe itself, the very same Europe that evangelized the world, it is the very same Europe where a number of churches are closing up. Some of the churches are theaters, So those religious foundations have, I don't know how did they get to a point where they got eroded in that part of the world. So Africa therefore becomes the continent that could provide a leader with that sense of tradition, that could bring back those foundations of society and reinstate them in a manner that could sanitize the world. So I'm also confident that Africa could provide such a figure who could bring just that to the world.
And
Okay,
Cardinal, I know you had a strict. Just a bit. I know you had a strict sort of conclusion that ultimately the choice has to be the one from God. But if you would allow me to push, what are the prospects of a black pope emerging?
I would say a black pope emerging, none at all, because nobody's going to vote for him as a black pope. They're going to vote for him for what he is, and to the extent that he is seen as living the will of God. That would be my take. If a pope comes from Africa, that's a different question, but not a black pope or an Asian pope or a Latin American or a European pope. No, I think that's looking at things from a very, very limited political point of view. We're not looking for a black pope. We're looking for someone who's going to lead the church of Jesus Christ in the way that Jesus Christ needs the church to be lived.
But you would admit, Cardinal, that racism has become a huge part of society. You were explaining earlier that the problems, for instance, of the sexual exploitation of young women, of young men, is part of a society. We grow up, all of us, bishops, cardinals, fathers, we are produced by just more than our faith, by the conditions, and part of that condition is racism. And Africa and black people have suffered in many of the religious provinces that originate from Europe. It's a big part of the historical experience of the faith. So we're not saying that they are elected on the basis that they are black, but because of that historic condition, could a predominantly European origins church see somebody that is black as worthy of being a pope, since it's subjected to the vote?
I think you're looking at the thing from the wrong sense of values. It's not an election like the American election, where Trump comes into office and Trump can do what Trump wants. This is a very well organized 2,000 years old organization, which has its main strength is that whoever the leader is, he sees himself as an instrument in God's hands. And that instrument in God's hands, he might have a particular culture, but it's not that culture that gives him the reason why he's in that position. That would be my worry about saying we want a black pope. Are you putting him there because he's black, or because he is the image of what God wants, what God needs at this time? That would be my worry about putting labels like that. You're introducing racism into a thing that's not racist, because it's above race. Whatever is dealing directly with God has to be above race.
Okay. Maybe we put it differently for you, Cardinal. Are we likely to see a pope? What are the prospects? I mean, even Francis was the first pope in the history of 2,000 years, was the first pope to come out of Europe. 2,000 years of Christianity and Catholicism coming and having existence across the world. Its leadership gathered for the first time, and a pope outside of the European province was elected or emerged. Yes. 2,000 years, that's a problem. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I don't think so. I think that the problem is we are putting people into compartments. God doesn't put us into compartments. We are all.
But people vote. The people who vote.
The Catholic Church is called Catholic because it is above all those boundaries that you're trying to put in place.
Let me put it to you. Let me ask a direct question. That will be my last sort of attempt on this question of race. It's the same as the question of class. It's the same. Which are the things that Francis pushed, that the church must advocate a specific value of being always for the poor, for the vulnerable, because the systems in the world they exclude. So the people that are gathering in the conclave at the moment are produced by the conditions in the world. And I'm saying that, are you saying we can just, based on the fact of their vote, agree that whatever decision that is going to come out is above the conditions that shape them?
Yeah. No, let me bring it down to the level of personal experience. As a cardinal voting in the conclave, these are the words which I spoke when I put my vote on the pattern so that it could be put into the chalice, out of which the name, it was then counted, the names were all read out. I call on the Lord Jesus to witness that I am voting for the one who I consider to be worthy. Those are the words used. It's not because he's got this quality or that quality. He's worthy to be the leader of the church. And I think that sums up everything that those cardinals who are
what
in there
makes
at the moment,
him worthy?
That's exactly the point. His performance as a bishop, his performance as a cardinal, the reputation that he has built up, and I would say in this case here, how he has interacted with his brother bishops and cardinals in terms of affirming those values that come from Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Separate before Father Ledwaba, I apologize for this. This reminds me of another sort of thing which I would want the cardinal to take an opportunity to sort of educate all of us about. Is the place of women. Already we know there won't be a woman pope, since the cardinals are always already male. Why is that the case?
Do you want to start right at the beginning?
Yes, Cardinal. Just an explanation.
Because
the females.
Because Jesus chose 12 men as his apostles, and those men were then detailed, go and spread the gospel and put into practice what I've taught you. And they in turn chose other men to be the leaders of the church. There's no other reason than why it must be a male or a female than that Jesus did that. Now we Catholics would hold that the purest, the holiest human being on this earth ever is Mary, the mother of Jesus. But Jesus didn't choose her to be a bishop or the head of his church. He chose Peter, a bungling, fallen man who kept on making mistakes. So it's not about male or female. It's about what is the best thing that God has for us at this time. And up to now, God has been showing us that he wants his church to be led by his son Jesus Christ and those that his son Jesus Christ is choosing. The cardinals in conclave are at the moment saying, we want to choose the one who before Jesus Christ is worthy of this position. As Jesus Christ.
So since they can choose somebody since they can choose somebody that is outside of themselves, I'm asking if they could choose a woman, since
no, they couldn't.
After 2000, so they are restricted from ever electing a woman.
Can I just make a little comment?
Some things.
Can I just make a little comment then?
Okay, yeah. Okay, Father Ledwaba, you can come in.
Yeah, Dr. Ndlozi, one of the things that we learn in Scripture is that Jesus Christ handed to Peter the key, He said to him, I give you the key of the kingdom, And I've been reflecting myself as to why did he hand him the key? Why didn't he hand him some knobkiri or some spear or some sword or something else? But why did he hand him the key? And you realize that the key in a sense, it's that one phenomenon of life that has to maintain shape at all times. And if the key loses shape, it can no longer unlock or lock. So for it to be effective and useful, it has to stay that way forever. And for the longest of time, the Catholic Church has been blamed for being an institution that seems to, at times, sometimes it might sound as if it doesn't move with times. It doesn't bend with the bending. It doesn't alter with alterations.
But Fr Ledwaba, doesn't Scripture?
It really maintains a certain shape, and it maintains the message as the Lord handed the message. And so in a sense, and we understand it that way, that it was the key that was then handed to Peter. So the one teaching that remains everlasting, and to seek to mutate it in any way, you render it ineffective. And the fact that this institution has survived for 2,000 years, it really goes to show that we did try for 2,000 years to maintain the shape, and that has rendered this institution relevant in the world. And the fact that you and I are engaged in this discussion, it really shows that what is going on in Rome, it has got
is very powerful. But Fr Ledwaba, might I push back a bit, if you may? We can, as human beings, because we are fallible, be trapped sometimes in traditions that are not even prescribed. I thought you were going to give me a scripture which says it ought to be either a male, that key has to be of a specific gender. I know that somewhere in Galatians, the Bible states that there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female. You are all one in Jesus Christ. And my question is a simple one. Couldn't these men, and they are men, couldn't they, through revelation, prayer, meditation, come up with, since they can elect somebody from outside, somebody like Mary to be the head of the Catholic Church?
Yeah,
because
remember,
there is neither male or female. There is just children of God.
Let me come in right there. The Catholic Church has, one thing that the Catholic Church has not lost throughout the ages is the identification as the Church as the mother. The Catholic Church, in terms of genders, is feminine. I mean, the Church is feminine. So Christ therefore becomes the bridegroom of this Church. The Church is the bride of Christ. And femininity in the Catholic Church is not just an abstract concept, but it is a real concept. It has got concrete manifestations, we have got a concrete understanding of what does it mean to be mother. Yeah. And therefore, so this Church is a woman. And therefore, femininity, it's not just an abstract concept, but it is a concrete concept.
So why can't it have a leader of a mother?
So Jesus Christ, to have if it has a leader of a mother, remember the one who presides over this Church, therefore presides in the name of Christ, and Christ has been known as man.
Okay.
As a man.
For the sake of time, Fr Ledwaba, I'm going to ask the Cardinal just to have his last sort of say. I mean, I think he might want to say something specifically about the last question I asked. Cardinal?
Yes, I think one of the problems that you guys in the media have, you want to put the Church into particular boxes. And the box that is convenient at the moment is women must be exactly like men. And that box just does not exist. Right from Adam and Eve, it has not existed, and it won't be there existing until the end of time.
But it's Galatians that says there is neither male nor female. It is the Bible itself.
All right. That's in a context of what rights you have as a Christian. It's not about what offices you can play, what offices you can hold. And the other thing Father Ledwaba was making was this: Jesus is the husband of the church. He's the bridegroom, and the church is his bride, is his bride. And we're not going to take the church into that same-sex marriage issue, which is your next question is going to be.
No. My question just related to women having the calling. But it's okay. My hour is finished. And we are all looking forward. I was completely flabbergasted by Pope Francis. And we are all looking forward to what is going to happen at the conclave, because the Catholic Church is that. It's just that powerful across the world. Its members hold very serious positions in different institutions that propel the world back and forth. Thanks to you both, and thanks as well for your comments.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
And thank you for your provocative question. Thank you.
Thanks, Cardinal. The time is 1100 hours here on Power Talk. Bandwana Benkosi. We're going to take the news with Nyakalo Tefu. She's our Pope here at Power.